Thank you for attending the DataON Virtual Meetup. It's been a while since last time we spoke. I think it's probably a month and a half ago. A lot of stuff does change in a month and a half, but I'm just happy to have a chance to continue to have a conversation with our partners, our customers. I see a lot of new faces or new attendees today, which I'm excited about because I don't want to be talking to the same people all day, which I don't mind because they're huge customers of ours. But I'm glad there are new people here. Because there are new people, I gotta actually spend 5 minutes telling you who DataON is and what our value proposition. Then after that, we have two speakers today. Very happy for them to be here. One of them from Intel, Steve, is here with me in the DataON office here in Anaheim, California. Steve, welcome.
Thank you.
And they'll do a quick intro. And along with Steve, his colleague Rami is also on the line. They'll talk about the management platform for data center manager for Intel. Also, I have Joe Nielsen. Joe is a longtime friend and partner of DataON from Solidigm. Solidigm, previously known as Intel. They spun out that business about a year ago, and now they're called Solidigm. But all our solution, our solid-state drive, and our storage are based on Solidigm solutions. So Joe will kind of give you a quick update on the new technology in the product, and I'll let Joe introduce himself once he gets on. Again, thank you for attending. Welcome. This is our normal monthly virtual meetup, and the goal of this meetup is to have a conversation about the latest technology, and please feel free to just talk. There's no set agenda. The goal is to have an interaction. You could go to the left field and start asking questions about anything you want. I'm sure there's enough people here on the call that can answer any questions that you have related to what we do, right? So without further ado, let me do a quick background on DataON so we can have this conversation. So, DataON is a hybrid cloud computing company based in California, Southern California. And our goal is to continue to help our enterprise customer, which we have many, on this journey of hybrid cloud. And this hybrid cloud journey really is focused on Microsoft because DataON is an exclusive Microsoft partner, and our technology revolves around helping customer understand this journey and making that Microsoft choice. In this process, DataON has been really doing a technology for a long time, over 35 years. Believe it or not, DataON's been around for 35 years, and we continue to evolve and stay close to bleeding edge technology. And 10 years ago, 11 years ago, DataON made a decision that we will focus our entire business around the concept of software-defined around Microsoft technology. And that technology definitely has evolved quite a bit in the last 10 years. So we're an exclusive Microsoft partner. In addition to that, we also understand that the value of an infrastructure really surrounds about building good hardware. And the hardware server that delivers the building blocks for a DataON solution is actually provided by Intel. Intel is the OEM manufacturer of our server. They're the one that makes the motherboard, the chassis, the power supply, the validation, the testing to ensure that the hardware that we deliver as part of our hyper-converged infrastructure is best breed. And when customer asks the question, I say you should always compare Intel server to the other server manufacturer like HP and Dell and Lenovo, because that's the comparison with the hardware. And clearly, in addition to these technology building block, we have our partner like Solidigm, who really is the only SSD vendor we have that build our solution, and also other technology partner like NVIDIA and Mellanox. On top of these building blocks in evolution, DataON continue to innovate and bring value to our customer with our software management tool called Must Pro, which allows you to have visibility into the hybrid cloud infrastructure. But in addition to that, we continue to want to make sure we add value, and that's one of the reasons we brought the Intel team in today, because Intel has a great solution on data center management, and we're in the process of integrating that into our overall offering to our customers. So you'll see another view of how we understand the challenges of making sure you have a clear and good management platform, and we want Intel to really deliver that to you. As a company, if you look at us, the goal is we want to deliver that turnkey solution to our customer, meaning that we want to make sure we deliver a complete end-to-end solution that includes building the infrastructure to run your production workload. And that workload traditionally could be a virtualized workload VM running Hyper-V, but more and more you'll see that that workload is evolving. It could be hybrid cloud workload, it could be container with Kubernetes, it could be VDI workload with AVD, it could be storage workload, it could be managed SQL. You could see that workload continue to evolve as this hybrid cloud journey continue. But more importantly, to complete that spectrum, we also help our customer with business continuity, backup and disaster recovery, whether or not it's on premises or through the cloud. So you'll see that our business continue to really focus on what the customer needs are and deliver the solution with our customer. And because of Microsoft, we're also a cloud service provider that allows our customer to understand the journey to the cloud. As a really high level background, DataON made the Microsoft choice 11 years ago, and this evolution of Microsoft technology since 2012, and today we're at the business of 2022, a new product called Azure Stack HCI Hybrid Cloud. DataON have delivered over 150 petabytes of storage to our enterprise customers. We have over 1,000 customers, and we have delivered over 1,500 plus HCI cluster across the world. Our focus on North America and Western Europe, with a lot of European customers as well. And we want to continue to deliver that value across the board. But today, as we sit here in 2022, with Microsoft innovation and Intel and Solidigm, you'll see that there are more and more capability that's been added to the overall infrastructure. That includes ability to do AI, ML at the edge, ability to support graphic solution for AI GPU, ability to run container services. So you'll see this evolution of technology continue to evolve as DataON continue to work with our customer base. Last slide, and I'll stop. Last two slides. I think at the end of the day, there are many customers that has been on this hybrid cloud journey with DataON and our partners. And the technology that we deliver to our end users, enterprise user, really cut across multiple verticals and multiple application workload. If you look at this chart of sample customer, you'll see that we have customer in state, local government, retail, manufacturing, financial, K-12 schools. So you can see really broad customer adoptions of Microsoft Azure Stack HCI technology, hybrid cloud, that allows them to continue on the journey to optimize their workload to the latest technology. I have one slide that let me just find it real quick that really is, I built it recently. I want to share that's interesting. This slide, I don't think anybody has even seen this slide before. I presented this slide last week in Atlanta with one of the big customers of ours called Cherokee County K-12. I wanted to show what Azure Stack HCI really represent. Azure Stack HCI is an entire infrastructure that sits on premises in your data center, runs your production workload. But it's a gateway to the cloud as a hybrid cloud platform. So if you look at the bottom, Azure Stack HCI continue to be that bleeding edge technology where it takes advantage of all the hardware innovation to deliver the best performance. And that means leveraging the latest technology from Intel with Intel Xeon Gen 3 platform. All the platform now is PCIe Gen 4, DDR4. We use the latest technology from Solidigm, all the NVMe SSD, that's kind of our focus area, all the technology NVMe. All the network are RDMA enabled, 2500, 200 gig with GPU acceleration and security with secure core. So from the hardware platform perspective, the technology we bring forth are definitely the bleeding edge and latest technology. From the management perspective, you'll see that we have our management platform that allows you to have visibility alert system to your infrastructure. But at the same time, we work with our partner like Intel to bring their technology into the end user like DCM, so you can have more visibility across the board while providing the support you need to make sure your infrastructure is running the next 5 years. On the middle part, the blue part is really the workload that majority of our customers are running on the Azure Stack HCI platform, replacing their traditional SAN. It could be general purpose, it could be SQL workload running in VM, it could be VDI workload, it could be edge workload running some kind of processing for AI, it could be container, or it could be managed Arc, where you could have all the data computing sitting on premises, but at the same time, allow Microsoft Azure to manage those instances with the evergreen environment called Arc Manage process. It could be Arc Manage SQL, Arc Manage other stuff across the board. But at the same time, we have a platform that really has built-in enterprise resiliency from Microsoft called Azure Stack HCI and software-defined networking, software-defined storage, virtualization. Those are capabilities that already come with Azure Stack HCI. And that could be stretch clusters, could be high availability, D2 compression. All these are foundational features that's already inbox when you have Azure Stack HCI. Then lastly, as you look up as a hybrid cloud, you could see the benefit of the services you get from Microsoft. Because you have an on-premises Azure Stack HCI platform, now you could take advantage of the services such as Azure Site Recovery for DR, Azure Backup, Azure Monitor, Azure File Sync, Insights, single policies. All these are capability of hybrid services that you could take advantage of as you take advantage of Azure Stack HCI. But at the same time, all the benefit that Azure provide you also deliver through Azure Stack HCI. A lot of customers are running 2008, 2012 SQL. They can get security updates. But with Azure Stack HCI, you could get the security updates from Microsoft free because you're running a hybrid cloud platform, right? You could get multi-cluster support. So in a single slide, I want to articulate the kind of the benefit of Azure Stack HCI from DataON and all the capability you could take advantage as a hybrid cloud platform. So hopefully that wasn't too long, but I want to really set the tone here a little bit about DataON, who we are. Without further ado, let me pass it to our partner Intel to talk about this little management support box that we've been talking about and how Intel, in addition being a technology leader in hardware, CPU, compute, GPU, also focus a lot on management and software, and that's the discussion today.
Thank you. Again, my name is Steve Wada. I'm also based here in Southern California, not too far away from DataON's facility. And with me today is Rami Radi, who's a partner of mine on our team. Specifically, data center management was what we'll talk about. You'll hear us use the term DCM a few times. DCM is an offering from Intel, which we offer to our customers, in this case, a firm like DataON that uses our OEM platform that we offer to specialists that have specific value propositions in the market. But we also offer it to selected end user customers. It's a whole different business discussion, but let's focus on the integration of DCM into the DataON and Azure Stack HCI platform. I wanted to include Rami to actually show you a bit of the tool in action. We want to make sure the power stays on the ground. There's fantastic features in the hardware. There's fantastic features in the Must platform. How do we put those together? So, in fact, let me turn it over to Rami right now, and he can give you a view of the DCM product in action. Rami?
Thanks, Steve. Can you guys hear me and see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, so very quickly, I'm based in Portland, Oregon. I've been in this team for almost 6 years now. I'm more on the technical side, so I work closely with our partners and customers to help them adopt and take advantage and integrate DCM's capabilities into their solutions or their environments. And I also have a project or product management responsibility, so I work with our engineering team to prioritize and decide on our roadmap and upcoming features. And I work closely with our other Intel stakeholders, like our DSG partners and so on. So I had, first of all, time check. How much time do I have? Just to make sure that I, plan accordingly.
You have about 15, 20 minutes.
Okay, so then what I'm going to do is go over one or two key slides, which are important to explaining what DCM is, and then I'll switch to a live demo, if that's okay. All right. So DCM is a 10-year-old commercial solution that Intel has been developing for a decade essentially. And what it essentially is it's a software solution that's designed to either be installed on a physical system or a virtual machine or a container. And it basically allows you to manage systems and other types of devices using their out of management ports. So that's what we call out of band. So on most recent servers and other types of devices, there's an RJ45 management port at the back that allows you to collect several types of telemetry that we'll talk about in a little bit through an embedded processor or microcontroller. And that therefore allows you to not have to depend on, installing agents on the system to be able to manage it remotely. Okay, so we started off obviously focusing on servers, but as the product grew, we eventually supported other types of devices, as I'll show in the next slide. And then we basically collect that telemetry and analyze it, do a lot of processing on it, and then expose it to the end customer, either through the console, the DCM console, which is shown over here, which is what I'll show you a demo of, but we also expose that programmatically via RESTful APIs right now. Okay, so a one DCM instance can manage multiple locations as long as they're all in the same virtual network. So for example, I have in the DCM instance that I'll be showing, I have DCM installed on a NUC running Ubuntu. And since we're within Intel on a virtual environment, I'm able to manage devices in Oregon, in Arizona, and even in EMEA as well. But you don't have to set it up just like that. So you can have an environment with multiple DCM instances, and you can also connect them to each other and have what we call a portal mode. This portal mode is not, something that is set up by default, but can be done. We've done it before. Okay, so the next slide should illustrate this a little bit more. It's a slightly more deeper overview of what goes underneath there. So what DCM does is that it uses industry protocols like IPMI and Redfish, which essentially communicate with what's called the baseboard management controller, which is what the RJ45 jack, is connected to essentially. And then that baseboard management controller interacts with other components, namely for servers, we're talking about node manager or the equivalent of that, like ILO, IMM, etc. And the telemetry that it collects from those servers are essentially inventory, power, thermals, health, and utilization. And I say here when available because we support much older servers as well, and some of those do not, for example, expose utilization information or do not expose inventory in the way that most servers do today using Redfish. Okay, so like I said, over time, we also supported other types of devices, SNMP, SSH, and so on. And like I was saying before, we exposed that after doing a lot of analytics and processing and reporting to the end user via the web console or through RESTful APIs. Okay. And as Steve was mentioning before, our ecosystem is really large. So we not only work with OEMs to ensure that we support their latest and greatest server generations, But we also work with a lot of ISVs and like DataON. Actually, this this screen needs to be updated. Sorry about that. But to integrate DCM capabilities into their solutions. But also direct customers, anyone with a data center that needs a single pane of glass, relatively reasonably priced and vendor agnostic solution to manage their infrastructure. Which is why, like I said before, even though Intel's more on the server side of things, we eventually supported PDUs and storage devices and network devices as well. Okay. Yeah, I think with that, let me just switch to a demo and show you some of these things live instead of just depending on some screenshots. Okay. Oh, am I sharing? Do you see this now? I forgot if I shared my whole screen or just an app. Okay.
We see it.
Okay. So this is my own instance running in my lab. As you see here, it's running on a small NUC running Ubuntu. And assuming that you've already installed DCM and that you set it up to manage some devices, and I'll talk about how that can be done very easily. Once you log in, you're presented with this dashboard, which is customizable and contains a lot of different gadgets that give you this bird's eye view of your data center. From things like what we recently started focusing on, and like data center sustainability and carbon emissions, both on an actual or projected level, to a summary of your hierarchy and how you're doing in terms of space and power and capacity, and even more deeper, including things like how you're doing in terms of power, which devices are consuming the most power, how you're doing in terms of health, which systems have lost connectivity, which are deemed unhealthy, which components are actually suffering more than others, and a list of all the events that you may you've subscribed to from the settings tab, and I can show that in a second. And of course, some statistics about all the events that have happened recently. Okay, so this is really just to get you going and understand what's going on. So for example, you might want to start taking a look at this particular server. This is a server that's deemed to be the most power consuming device in my entire data center. So let's click on that and see where that takes me. So once I click on that, it takes me to the hierarchy tab, which basically shows you where that device exists in the physical hierarchy that you've already defined. Like you see here, I have one data center with multiple rooms, each room having multiple rows and so on. And for this device, you get to see its information, including its IP address. This is the BMC IP address, not the OS IP address. You see its capabilities, like what is being monitored exactly, its device model, its firmware details. So if I click here, you get to see the firmware versions of several subcomponents, a link to its management console. So if you want to remotely connect to that system and open a virtual KVM or launch virtual media and install an OS remotely, you can do that. Okay, it might take a little bit longer. I think that's system has some issues, but believe me, this is how you do so. And then you can start to see things like its inventory, like the management modules, the storage devices, the details of those storage controllers, the number of NICs that you have here, and additional peripherals when available. Now this, like I said, this inventory section will vary from device to device, but the DCM exposes whatever that device is capable of exposing. And this is mostly done today by Redfish. Okay. You also start to see for all of the subcomponents of this system, which ones have current issues. So apparently there is a problem with this system's power supply, so it's worth looking into that. You can see a recent fault history. Okay, so obviously this power supply issue has been going on for a while. Which may correlate to why this system is deemed, is consuming quite a bit of power, right? So I can now take a look more in-depth look at the power and temperature graphs for this device over a period of time. So by default, it's an hour, but you can see all the way up to a year. By the way, DCM stores everything locally. It's an on-premise solution, so nothing is stored or sent externally or stored on the cloud. This has always been the case. This was a clear request from almost all of our partners to have an on-premise, secure solution. And everything is encrypted in a local Postgres SQL database. By default, DCM collects everything from all of the devices that it's monitoring for a year. And by default, DCM can accept or can monitor 20,000 nodes with a single instance. That is not an upper limit, but that is a healthy a healthy limit, I would say. You can go higher than that if needed by doing some tweaks, but without any changes or configuration changes or taking anything into consideration, DCM can support 20,000 nodes easily. And 20,000, 1 year of data for 20,000 nodes is almost 400 gigabytes, which is, I think, the only constraint when setting up DCM in an environment. It's not a big constraint, but because it's not in the order of terabytes, as one might think. Yeah, I just thought that would be worth mentioning. Anyway, so back to this. So obviously there's some problem with the system. You see here that it's consuming power because while the utilization is minimal, right? So the next step would be to take a deeper look at these events and these logs. There's a way to download the event logs from that server and take action accordingly, right? So DCM won't really give you hints or suggestions on what to do, but it will give you all of the data that will help you make a quick decision. Okay. Any questions here before I move on? Okay. So, for example, this is another server, a more recent server. You might be familiar with this. The code name for the system is Coyote Pass. So this exposes a lot more inventory information, including our Intel GPUs as well. So I've been working quite a bit on that recently. So you get to see the CPU details, but also GPU details right now. Okay. Now, moving back to the dashboard. Actually, let me switch for a second. So I've already created.
Rami, quick question.
Yeah,
hey,
sure.
Current DataON customers, Andy, Ernie, would you guys want to use this? Is it available to you?
So I've taken a look at this before, and it's definitely we have maybe like 20 plus nodes right now, maybe more, maybe less. And yeah, it's definitely something that has piqued our interest. There's the obvious limitation is onboarding everything, like doing like a network scan to pick up all the nodes, and then we've had a habit of putting in passwords, secure, like different passwords for each different node, just for security purposes. So like the onboarding portion obviously needs some manual love. Yeah. But so yeah, I mean, in terms of the product, it's been very usable.
Oh, I'm happy to hear that. Actually, I was going to touch on that right now. So I've shown you how things look like when systems are already there. But to add systems, there's actually 3 ways. One is if you go to the devices, which shows you all of the devices that you have regardless of the hierarchy. So here you can do more complicated searches and organization and whatnot. So the most tedious way is to add a device manually. So if I say Rami, I can choose this to be of type server or network or storage. And then for each type of device, you get to see all of the details. The top section here is what's essential. So basically the IP address for IPMI, the credentials, and if there's any keys. And then everything else is optional. But the more details you give to DCM, the more you can make use its features. For example, if you add the age, then you can start to get alerts when systems become a little bit old, and that might help you in your next server procurement. If you add weight, then you're able to do more weight management, which is important for raised floor environments. If you add owners, then you can set alerts to go to a specific owner. If you set warranty expiration, then you can get alerts for when that happens to take, again, action accordingly. If you enter the size of the device, then you can do more or better capacity planning. And if you add OS credentials, then you might be able to get additional details, like, for example, storage details from SmartMon tools, for example. And I can show that in a little bit. But like I said, these are not essential. The essential things are basically the credentials, which gives you the minimum of power, thermal, and health monitoring. Okay, so that's the tedious way. Now, the second way is to do a discovery or an import task. A discovery task suits what you just mentioned, doing a scan of your network. So here you give it a beginning address and an ending address, and assuming that the passwords or the credentials are the same, you can then very quickly just add those devices into DCM and then add them into the hierarchy later. But since you mentioned that your passwords are different, then you can also, by the way, add this or create a discovery task that is scheduled to run at recurrent times, for example, every day or every week. This is a relatively recent feature that we added based on customer feedback. But if that doesn't work for you, then the next best thing would be an import task, where here you give it essentially a CSV file of all of the systems that you want DCM to add. Each row would correspond to a device, and each column would correspond to all of the different fields that I just mentioned. Okay, and that is the fastest and easiest way to get yourself up and running with DCM. DCM will just go over each device and start adding them one by one.
I have two quick questions as a
Sure.
little bit of a follow-on to Ernie's comment.
Yeah.
One, can you use other than username and password for the IPMI authentication? For example, can we use SSH key pairs? Because
Yeah,
I noticed in there, so that we can have a scenario where the server generates a public key that I can then present to all the different IPMIs. Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely can. So IPMI is the default because it's the still the most dominant way of managing systems out of band. Redfish, basically HTTPS, is becoming the second most popular, but yes, you can use SSH as well.
Well, but I notice even when you're on IPMI, you have IPMI key as an option.
Yes, correct.
So can I forego the password and present IP, because other solutions have the ability to authenticate to IPMI via a certificate pair or a key pair. Is that possible?
I haven't done that before. I may have misunderstood your question before. Sorry about that.
Yeah, because especially since we just had a penetration test here, and all of our IPMIs that were completely up to date, including the Intel ones and the HP ones, they were able to dump the passwords out of all of them. So we've switched almost, and we're in the process of switching everything over to key pair authentication.
So my off the top of my head, I think that yes, the answer to that question is yes, but I haven't done so myself. So I can confirm this offline and get back to you. But the fact that there's an IPMI key here, that kind of indicates to me that this is, yes, something that is possible.
That's what I'm hoping. Also, what about non-Intel devices? Can I throw an HP device in there?
Yeah, so absolutely. So like I said, we've worked with lots of OEMs in the past, and basically what we use is IPMI and Redfish for the communication. And we have different connectors within DCM to understand not just node manager, but which is what we use for our DSG servers, but also ILO, IMM, iDRAC. We do support all of those devices, and that's what makes DCM, like I said before, you know, a single pane of glass vendor agnostic solution. We understand that. Yeah, we understand that lots of no data center will have one brand. It's really rare to find that situation, and that is why we spent many years on those different connectors to be able to support all of the. They're you know, they're all of our partners in the end. So
wait, Andy, are you saying DataON is not your only love? You actually have HP?
No,
is that what
I have not. No, you know, well, I have not bought an HP server since I've been here. The only servers I have bought have been DataON, but that doesn't mean they don't exist in my data center anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we've seen the complaint from many customers in the past. So like they need to use HP's tools to manage their ILO-based devices, iDRAC for others, PDUs, their specific PDU software for their PDUs. So that's essentially what helped DCM grow, is this intention to, you know, solve this problem by offering a true single pane of glass solution. It doesn't, you know, we don't make a ton of money by doing so, but it helps the end user.
No, I appreciate it. Didn't mean to take you too far off track.
No problem. This is a good question. Okay. So
Yost has a question.
But Andy, you should ask the question also, how do I get it? And I will say, Andy, you have it already. DataON server already come with DCM, and I'm not going to charge you any more for it. So all the existing customer on the call, if I haven't spoke to you about this technology, you know, even though it existed for a while, we haven't spent time on the server level management because we've been very focused on the Microsoft piece of it. But as our customer continue to grow their environment nodes, this request has become a part of the request when we talk to big customers. And that's why we engage with Intel. And what we learn also is because we have Intel exclusive servers, L9 servers, these DCM manager could work already with all your server today. So all the customer today, when you have DataON server, because DataON is exclusive Intel, you could load the DCM today and see all your environment instantaneously.
Yeah. Now you get additional benefits, of course, by using DCM for Intel servers and DataON servers. For example, provisioning, which is, I think you'll like this. So, for example, you probably would want eventually to not just update the firmware of those devices, but update them in groups, and also ensure that the BIOS settings are all identical on those servers. So you can really do this easily with DCM. And this is one of the differences, or one of the benefits for that DCM has, you know, for managing DataON servers. So how this works is, if you notice here that the management module firmware version is showing 2.88. If I click on this, you'll see this histogram that shows you that in my entire environment, I have several servers of this model, 3 to be exact. Each one is running a different management module firmware version. So this is obviously not good. So this is a very quick indicator that I probably would want to resolve this because firmware versions may impact reliability, security, performance, and so on. So, and the same thing with all of the other kind of components here. If you look at this drive, you get to see that I only have one of those drives. So this is not really helpful, but actually you see what I'm talking about. A BIOS. So I have 2 servers of the same model running different BIOS versions. So again, might be worth updating. So how does that work? You click on the provisioning link over here, and this will allow you to provision this particular server. So you can send an update task for this particular server to run either now or at a specific time. If you want to run it at night, you can load a firmware version on the server that's hosting DCM. That's what's called pre-configured, or you can upload one from your local device from where you're accessing the console. And yeah, you also get the ability to automatically get notifications when there's a new firmware version available for the server. And you can do this not just for one device, but many. So if I go back here using the devices tab, I can say for all these servers that are exactly of the same model, I can provision them and do this firmware update for all of them. Now, if I chose one that's slightly different model, it will not be happy about that because it understands that they're not the same. So, so I can do this for all 3 devices in a single click. And to make things even easier, I don't have to look for these devices, but I can also create logical groups. For example, if you have a cluster that you're monitoring or managing in particular, you can say you can add the devices for that cluster and provision only those devices in that cluster. So making things much easier for you. And I know I'm running out of time here, but I think this is all important. With regards to provisioning, you can also create a provisioning task which gets the system options file from a specific server. What that does is that it reboots the server and creates a text-based dump of all the system settings that you can then edit manually offline. And then once you're done with that and happy with that, you can deploy it to multiple servers and ensure you have like a golden BIOS settings image for all of those systems. Or you can also change, single system setting at once. For example, if I want to change quiet boot or Intel VT for directed I/O. Okay.
Just to pile onto that real quick, another thing that has just happened in my world is we had to renew our cybersecurity insurance. And one of the provisions within that insurance policy is that any systems affected by a cyber event, the claims would be denied if the firmware or operating system patches are more than 90 days out of date.
Wow. Okay.
What?
So
Really?
So if you run around not updating your firmware on your servers, put it in the rack and be happy with it, then at least the newer insurance policies are going to deny claims if you have a cyber event.
That is actually a feature that we're planning for our next release, which is another event. Remember that those events that I was telling you about before? Another event that shows you the last firmware version date alert. So like you said, if it's more than 90 days, then it would pop up an alert or show an indicator for that particular system that the firmware of the system is pretty old. So yes, that's not just showing you that there's a new firmware out there, but warning you that this one is quite old.
Thank you, Rami.
No problem. Okay. Yeah. Do I have 2 more minutes, or
you
need me to wrap up?
Okay. You could wrap it up if you don't mind.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. Absolutely. So that was basically the provisioning, and what else did I want to talk about here? There was something important. So mounting an ISO image, you can give DCM a Samba image path, Samba server image path, so that you can install an OS entirely remotely. And one cool thing that we just added is this batch provisioning, which allows you to do all 3 in a specific sequence for not just one device, but many devices. For example, you want 10 servers in the cluster to be number 1 updated with a certain firmware. Then you want to change the options, the system settings, and then mount an ISO image for all 10 servers at the same time. Okay. Okay, last but not least, so in terms of inventory, or hierarchy, you can also make this as sophisticated as you'd like it to be. So for example, for the room, if I click change to this tab and make a layout, you can create sophisticated blueprints of your rooms and show where each rack is, right? And then for each row, you can switch to a different view, which would show you the racks this way. And this is, again, another easy way to kind of identify, systems that have issues, overheating issues. Many times we would correlate this information with the layout of a room and identify airflow issues or obstructions causing systems to overheat and whatnot. Now, the absolute last thing that I need to talk about is sustainability. So this is brand new in DCM 5.0, which allows you to monitor, predict, and control your environment's carbon emissions. And it does that by doing two things. Number one, you need to give DCM a couple of values here to use as a reference. For example, the electricity cost per kilowatt hour, your power usage effectiveness, and your carbon emissions factor. These are pretty, easy for most data centers to kind of input. And once you do that, you then DCM uses the power data that it's already collecting to kind of create those, those histograms, and you can then set thresholds for a monthly threshold or a yearly threshold. And what this then does is DCM can, if you wanted to, start to control the power consumption of those servers to ensure that you never hit those limits. Okay, so this is slightly similar to creating power capping policies, which DCM can also do. I'll actually delete this and start one here, and this will be the last thing that I show. So if I click here and say I want to add a power policy on this rack and say that I don't want this rack to reach more than 6,000 watts. Okay, and then I can say, if I know which servers are more important than others, I can say that this is critical, this is low, this is medium. This gives DCM some guidance as to which ones it can freely alter its power consumption or frequency. Okay, and you can set this as a permanent policy or make it recurrent or run it at a specific time. Yeah, and you can do this for one of two reasons: either to just set a power policy so that you never, insurance policy so that you never exceed the limit of the rack, but you can also do this to kind of squeeze in more racks, more servers per rack, and kind of increase your rack density that way. That may impact performance, obviously, a little bit, but it's all about finding that sweet spot between the savings of space and not impacting performance so much. Okay.
Thank you, Rami.
No problem. There's a lot more. I can keep on going, but obviously I don't want to do that. But hopefully this was a good overview of the most important features of DCM.
This has been great. Thanks, Rami. And I'm sure if any of our customers have more questions or reach out, then we'll bring you in as necessary. Thank you. This is actually really good because this is the first time we show that, DataON server with Intel has this capabilities. Thanks. Joe, you're up. Sorry for the late, but you got plenty of time. Don't worry. Take your time and let's talk about bleeding edge Solidigm SSDs.
Let's do it. Let me put this into slideshow mode. Yeah, so guys, I won't keep you around too long. I've got maybe, 4 or 5 slides. I want to put in a quick plug here for the latest and greatest hardware. So quick reintroduction, like Howard said, with Solidigm. So I was at Intel for 22 years, sporting a blue shirt. And now I changed the color of my shirt to purple in December. And what I'm showing you guys here is kind of, where the name came from. Hang on a sec. Okay, here we go. Yeah, so basically, 2 years ago, SK Hynix announced that they were going to buy Intel's SSD division. And so together, we've come together and formed a new company. So it's operating completely independent. We're calling ourselves Solidigm. We officially started operating as this new company in January. So we've kind of been in an operation for a year. So it's this, I'm about 1 year away from being an Intel employee now. And we, where did the name come from? We kind of combined the words paradigm and solid, so that's where the word Solidigm comes from. But really, I think it was a good match. SK didn't sell a whole lot of data center SSDs. They're very strong in client, very strong in mobile. So our at Intel, our main business was data center SSDs, so that matched very well. Also, to get a little nerdy on you guys, the SSDs are basically contain what we call NAND silicon, which is the transistor-based storage media that stores all the ones and zeros. And the way that they build their storage media is a little bit different than the way we do it. So we specialize in floating gate. They specialize in charge trap. So now we have best of both worlds. And then from a capacity perspective, we had our own fab. They had multiple fabs. So now we can really kind of compete, with the biggest guys out there from a capacity perspective as well. So it's really, I think the combination made a lot of sense. And, DataON, like Howard said, has been using Intel hardware for so long. And that's kind of where we fit into the mix. So if you cracked open a DataON server today, you would see that the drives themselves still carry the Intel brand, and they're which is kind of funny because they are being sold by Solidigm now, but physically the SSDs are still branded as Intel. So it's kind of our separation from Intel is slow. We're slowly separating. Even some of the drives that we've launched since separating are still Intel branded drives. But some of the new drives that we're going to start shipping next year will start kind of being rebranded on that physical drive itself. So I just kind of want to point that out. So I'm Joe from Solidigm, but I'm still in a way selling Intel SSDs. And then on our marketing material, we may call it a Solidigm drive, but we'll put in parentheses formerly Intel, but physically they're still all carrying the Intel brand. So just for fun, I gotta say I've got a little bit of swag. I got a couple. Hold on, let me switch here. Got a couple fancy
Nice.
purple socks. I know you guys would look great in these. So I'm just gonna ask a quick question. So quick question. Not a big deal, but does anyone know what the highest capacity SSD is that we're selling today? Highest capacity Intel branded SSD. If anyone knows it, just shout it out. Not you, Howard.
Come on, guys, please talk.
I think I know.
Yeah, you can't guess, Rami. Sorry.
I can't? Oh, man.
Come on, guys, you could do this.
Type it in the chat if you don't know.
Yeah, type in the chat. Ernie, you know.
No, well, I want other people to participate.
Oh, wow, you're so kind.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, very generous of you. Well, okay. I'm going to tell you.
Google. I like it.
All right.
20 terabyte, Nathan says.
Yeah, good.
1.9
Okay.
petabyte.
I'm going to say we're going to stop it right there and say Nathan, Steve, Oscar. I'm going to send the three of you guys some purple socks. All of you are way off, but that's okay.
Wait, I thought everybody gets purple socks, Joe. Whoever's here gets purple socks. What do you mean? You can't do that. You got to go buy more socks.
I could probably swing that. So we'll work that offline.
Everybody get purple socks. Everybody put your email on the
You
chat. Everybody put your email in the chat, and Kelly will send you a note for your address, send you purple socks. Okay? Put your email in the chat, please.
You get socks, and you get socks.
Yes, everybody gets the socks.
All right, good guess, guys. It's 30 terabyte. So we're at 30 terabyte today, and you know, DataON, our 30 terabyte drive is, we call it the P5316. DataON does have a server that supports P5316. So, you know, so if you put, you know, just theoretically, hypothetically, if you put 30 of these 30 terabyte drives in a system, you'd have 1 petabytes in a server. So, you know, eventually these things are going to get pretty dense. Okay, so yeah, so DataON, we've, you know, loved partnering with them for a long time, because they, you know, one thing I could say about the DataON team is that they're always on the leading edge and using the best hardware out there. So, you know, industry leader there. And at Intel, here's one big difference between Intel and Solidigm. At Intel, I was legally constrained from using hyperbole. So I could never, so by hyperbole, I mean, I could never say, we have the world's best processor or the world's fastest X, because, you know, Intel's a giant company and always getting sued from everyone. So we, as marketeers, can never use hyperbole. But now that we're Solidigm, we're a little looser, and we feel confident, and saying that our latest NVMe drive, our latest TLC NVMe drive, is the industry's most advanced PCI Express Gen 4 product. So we're going through a transition to this drive right now. A lot of the DataON systems have the P5510, and we're transitioning to this 5520. So I just want to give you a couple slides to plug this latest hardware that you're going to see in some of the servers. All right, so here's kind of just a Intel gen-on-gen view. So we're talking now about a PCI Express Gen 4 drive. This 5520 is kind of like a slight tweak, a slight advance from the 5510. You know, the game in the SSD world is adding layers to the silicon. So as you add layers, you can cram more gigabytes, right, into the NAND. And we're up to 144 layers. So it's still, so 5520 is the same NAND media as 5510, but we have upgraded the controller a little bit and optimized it a little bit more. And really, a lot of the special sauce is in the controller, right? The controller is what tells the SSD where to put the data, right? And it kind of controls, in a lot of cases, how fast you can put the data. You know, you can read and write to the media. So we're comparing the last 3 generations, and these percentages are like versus our Gen 3 drive, which was the P4510, and that was our highest selling SSD for years, and it was used in a lot of DataON servers. So that was in gray. And we went to our first Gen 4 144 layer drive was in purple. That's the 5510, and now we have this 5520. So you know, so over here in random performance, you know, your random performance, this is where we included some really cool optimizations in the controller that gave us a really big boost on random read, even compared to this the other PCI Express Gen 4 drive with the same NAND silicon. So this is all controller optimizations. Your random reads are a lot faster with this new generation, and you know, a little bit faster on the random writes and the mixed workloads. And then sequential, you know, you see lesser improvements on sequential versus the 5510 but you do see huge improvements versus the Gen 3 drive, and that just has everything to do with the fact that PCI Express Gen 4 is has more bandwidth than Gen 3. But then latency also did improve. So the improvements comparing just PCI Gen 4 to Gen 4, you know, a lot of those improvements that we got with the 5520 were based on these controller optimizations. So just to get a little more theoretical on you, this is kind of, I'll show you, the next slide is versus competition. Which is, I want to back up the statement why we feel like this is the world's most advanced, industry's most advanced TLC SSD. So from, you know, so one thing to keep in mind when designing an SSD, most companies care about what's called four corners performance. So by four corners performance, we mean sequential read, sequential write, random read, random write. Okay, so 100% sequential read, 100% sequential write, or 100% random read or 100% random write. So if you're designing the drive and you're designing the algorithms and the firmware to decide how to read and write, you can really optimize for these four corners, right? And that's really what that tells most of the story. That's what goes on your data sheet mostly. That's what most customers look at. However, if you stop there, you're really missing out, because in the real world, there's a lot of other things that matter, right? So there's quality of service under increasing write pressure. So what that means is you typically don't have 100% of any one type of read or write. You're going to be reading while you're writing, and typically the more you write to the drive, the slower your reads get. So you want to be able to maintain those read speeds as you're increasing that write pressure on the drive. Also, you're doing garbage collection, you're moving data around, wear leveling and whatnot. You want to be able to do that in a smart way, right? The other thing is, like, you may be running multiple virtual machines on a server. You have multiple tenants, noisy neighbor type of problems, and you want to be able to account for that, as well as if you put like a kind of a storage analyzer on your server, you're basically queuing up reads and writes at any given time. And typically when we talk about random read and random write performance, we're talking about very high queue depths. But the reality is, if you look at a server running in the real world, running multiple types of workloads, on average, you're typically operating at a queue depth of around 12, 18 type of queue depth. That's the real world queue depth. That's how many reads, writes have been queued up in the real world. You're rarely operating at a queue depth of 100, couple hundred something. So what I'm saying is, to toot our horn a little bit, our engineers, I think, go to the next level to really optimize for real world performance. And you can look at, here's one example. So let me explain what you're looking at here. Lower is better. And so we're showing the 5520 in purple compared to a comp drive in orange. And we're showing latency. You want low latency, right? You want a quick, the time it takes to get a read. All right. So you ask for a read, and how quickly do you get it back? So as you increase that write pressure, it's hard to get a consistently low read time, right? And so as you can see here, we feel like we do it better than others when it comes to mixed workloads. Not just four corner performance. As you're mixing in more and more writes, we can continue to deliver that consistently low latency read. So you're going to get that low latency read 99.99% of the time, which is what quality of service is. So that so that 40% number really kind of is pretty powerful when you and really this translates more to real world. The one last slide I have here is that Storage Review did a good review very recently on this 4520. You can Google it up, and they benchmarked the 5520 versus like 6 other drives, all of our top competitors. We do really well in four corners. We don't win at all, but they look at real world applications and in here lower in the article. And we're in several of those, we really crush the competition, and it really starts to stand out. So very competitive in four corners performance, but in the real world applications, this SSD really shines. So we're very, very proud of it. And we definitely expect this to be kind of our highest selling drive, by the within the next quarter or two. So something we're pretty excited about. And we're excited that DataON is using it as well. So that was my plug for the 5520, and I hope you guys like the socks.
Thank you, Joe. This is actually really good. We are transitioning all our design to 5520 now, so we are going to be bleeding edge. So all the design we have for our ACI stack, it will be 5520. So a lot of new customer that I don't recognize, feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions about anything about Azure Stack HCI Hypercloud. And looking forward to seeing all of you on our next meetup. Thank you for attending. Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Intel.